It's time to start looking into the visa problem. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a preface of what I know currently. I don't have all the information, but this is the way this looks to me. Visa has gone out of their way because a bunch of fucking fat ugly bitches in an organization called Collective Shout have gone out of their way to attack and harass Visa to the point that Visa has gone out of their way to be like, we are the moral arbiters of what you can and cannot buy. We decide whether you can or cannot have certain games. Now, granted, there are certain games that are technically illegal in certain jurisdictions, like games that involve like weird shit like rape and stuff like that. And I look at this from the perspective of art, right? There's a famous painting of a guy. He did a painting of, I think it's Jupiter eating his sons, or it might have been Kronos eating his sons, not the pirate software dev, the actual guy. And that artwork is a famous artwork. Should that artwork be banned because it showed something horrific? Should you not be able, yes, it's Saturn, that's it. Should we not be able to experience something that is horrifying and terrible and a complete mistreatment of someone else? Should we just close our eyes and pretend it doesn't exist? No. Absolutely not. Because it's still an art form. It's still an expression of art whether you disagree with it or not. I don't think a payment processor should ever have the fucking right to decide what you cannot or can look at. And the fact that a bunch of fat bitches in a back office somewhere phoned Visa and harassed them long enough to get a bunch of video games pulled down from Steam is disgusting to me. That is sickening, because today it's gonna be the weird, creepy, the weird, creepy rape games or whatever the fuck else. Tomorrow, they're gonna start deciding no more violence in video games. You all have to play Animal Crossing and nothing else. When does Visa decide, hey, you really love playing, I don't know, Call of Duty? No more. We're not going to process those funds. And we've seen this before from payment processors. We've seen this behavior before. Does anyone remember that they stopped doing payment processing for OnlyFans for a while? This is the same thing. They've decided that they are the moral arbiter of what you're allowed to look at and what you're not allowed to look at. And that to me disgusts me. And this is sick. This is okay. I want to indicate to you how vindictive I am as a piece of shit. So don't ever take me as a moral arbiter. You know what I thought would be a really, really good and effective way to fuck with these payment processors? Is if a bunch of people pretended to be journalists for big newspaper articles, and they started phoning Visa, asking if they could speak to someone who could legally represent Visa, and then ask Visa, hey, by the way, these Collective Shout people, we seem to have found that a lot of them are on the sex offenders registry. Does Visa support people who actually rape children, stuff like that? And then watch Visa reverse their decision or come out with a fucked up statement. And it would be a complete lie. It would be complete manipulation and lie. But you know what? These people are fighting dirty. And so part of me wants that to happen. But that's not the right way to go about this. But that's the fantasy I had in my head of how would you fuck with these people? How would you get Visa to reverse their decision? Let's see what I'm missing.
The rule changes everything, and Valve, at least from their perspective, had no choice but to implement.
Yes.
So here's what's happened.
A lot of people are mad at Valve for this, as far as I've seen, and I think they're completely missing the point. It's not about Valve. Valve doesn't do the payment processing. They just get to strap the payment processing system onto their site. And if you can't pay for something, Valve is not going to sell that thing because they don't want to fuck over their customers. So it's the safest option for Valve is to just be like, okay, we're just going to have to take it offline because what else can we do? We don't have a payment processing system for ourselves. It's not going to happen.
And last week, Valve quietly added Rule 15 to Steam. They used to have 14, now there are 15. And this
Hold on. Content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors. Yeah, this is Steam saying there's nothing we can do about it. The payment processors are in control and there's nothing we can do. And related card networks and banks or in internet service providers, in particular certain types of... Yeah. That Steam has to do this. I don't blame Steam for this. Having looked inside of companies, there's a lot of shit that companies really, really, really want to do, not just because it's beneficial to you, but it's beneficial to them, and it makes life easier, and they just can't do it because of roadblocks like this. There used to be a website in my country that used to sell really, really good PC stuff. It was called Foxy Tech. Do you know what sank that company in my country? It was the fact that every time they imported shit into my country, they were selling it at a loss in order for people to get a reasonably priced GPU. And they had no choice but to increase the price of every single piece of PC hardware that they sold. Not because they couldn't sell it at a lower price, but because the import taxes got so fucking bad because my government kept on stealing money from them that it literally crashed their business and made it non-viable. Not because they wanted to sell things at that price, but everyone stopped buying stuff from them because it was just too prohibitively expensive and they couldn't do anything about it. Roadblocks like this fuck up how good things can be.
15th rule bans content that payment processors don't like. Now, this is not illegal content. It's just content that Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal find to be objectionable.
Yes.
And here's what this means. It means that Valve no longer controls what is on their platform. The payment companies control that.
Yes.
And if this kind of thing sounds familiar to you, it should. Countless platforms like Patreon have experienced similar. And then just after we finish the body of this video, the hammer blow fell on itch as well. There's a lot going on. On Steam, though, to just stay focused on that for now, what just happened is that hundreds of games just got pulled. Developers got a $100 credit as compensation, and this is just the beginning. We're going to see way more, and the situation is that the people impacted are furious. The fans are actually quite scared, quite worried, but the people who pushed for this change, they are happy, they've had success, and they are not planning on stopping. I've also got...
Only real way around this is prepaid cards. You can buy it with cash and bypass all of it. Okay, so there is actually, funnily enough, Angry Dog, there is actually a way around this. If I remember correctly, and someone can correct me on this, I've spent a little bit of time in Japan, and they have these very bespoke and interesting ways of dealing with these problems, where I had to have this explained to me, so maybe it's changed, maybe it no longer works, I don't know. I'm going off of information that's over a decade old here. If you were in Japan and you wanted to buy something online, right? And it was, something risque. What you used to be able to do is you would go to a site, you'd go to checkout, and you would be like, I want to pay cash for this thing. I don't want to put this through a card. And what would happen is they'd give you a barcode. You could then print out that barcode, and you would go to a convenience store or some shopping center. You go to the counter, you give them the barcode, they scan the barcode, and then you just pay for it at the counter. Yes, you can still do that. Okay, well, that's good to know. I don't know if that's outdated. Maybe I'm missing some steps, but I remember having this conversation with the guy that we stayed with when I was in Japan. And I think a system like that, if you don't want to use crypto, why not have a system like that that's global? That'd be so much better.
News for the thousands of you who have visited and used our sponsor, Boot.dev, and that news is TypeScript. If you know what that means, you know it's pretty huge. The entire backend learning path is now playable in TypeScript as well as Go. It's funny, Lane, the founder's tweet, basically just reads, "Fine, you win. We've capitulated to the way of soy because enums." And if you're wondering why you should care, well, TypeScript is Microsoft's vastly more powerful JavaScript. Static types, fearless refactors, editor auto-completion, lots of lovely things, which is why Google, Slack, and Airbnb use it in production. It lets you catch bugs while you're coding instead of, when the server's on fire.
In Argentina, we have the same system too. Good.
Wraps all of that in the power of an RPG. That means quests, XP, boss fights, real-time leaderboards, community, all of that. You get to enjoy that while you're wiring up databases, building REST APIs, deploying to the cloud, and now doing all that with TypeScript.
You know what's really confusing about this ad? I feel like it's actually trying to do something useful for people instead of just stealing money. Good night, Angry Dog. I didn't recognize this as an ad because it seems like you get some value out of this. It's so strange.
By the time you finish your learning path, you will have a portfolio full of back-end projects. You'll have the confidence to dual-wield TypeScript and Go in any gig, which is going to be huge for employers. And there's a bit of a hack to save you the most money. Boot.dev/Ballier News, code Ballier News gets you 25% off with your first purchase. But what you can do is buy the yearly plan, the largest saving, because, 25% of a bigger number is a bigger number. And if you don't gel with it, well, just use the no-risk 30-day money-back guarantee. Okay, let's talk about what actually happened. Steam used to have 14 rules for developers. We actually just looked at it recently in this video, but now there's a 15th rule. So here's the new rule. Content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related networks and banks or internet network providers, in particular certain kinds of adult-only content. That's, the thing you can't do. Now pay attention to the wording here.
Yeah, may.
May. Not does violate.
They gotta keep it vague like that. They have to keep it vague. They don't have a choice in this. If the payment processor says to Steam, jump, Steam's got to go, yes, daddy, and then ask how high.
Just may violate. And what's key to understand is this goes beyond the existing rules. As an example, Rule 3 already bans mislabeled adult content. Rules 6 and 7 ban illegal content and shock value material. So what's Rule 15 for? Well, it's for content that previously was allowed by the other 14 rules. Content that is now retroactively banned. And here's how the rule played out. Eagle-eyed users spotted a change. SteamDB's removal...
Hold on. Let's see what's being taken off. Sexual punishment for married girl who shoplifts. Neji Komi Simulator. Gapping amputee sex slave petrified. Man. Isn't it weird how we can't come up with a creative MMORPG that works differently? But the porn people have come up with like a billion different creative ideas and then executed on like dog shit. Can you please point out which one of these games are not rape games? Okay, sexual punishment, shoplift, rape game. Sex slave, rape game. Train capacity. This relies on that whole thing of people getting molested on Japanese trains, I think. So, rape game. Paradise cleaning. Might not be a rape game. This sounds like you just bang the maid. Heavenly Badonkas Angel Bitches. May or may not be a rape game. Paradise cleaning. Cuckold princess. Okay, well, that's going to rape my eyeballs. Black office. Entertainment development department. So this is for the BBCs. Might be a rape game, might not. Sisters hypnosis. Probably a rape game. Definitely a rape game with that many 2-minute noodles in it. Newlywed female teacher Murray. May or may not be a rape game. This might just be a game about banging a married woman. Isekai mom story. What do you play as a mom who got isekai? Yeah, this is probably a rape game. NTR with hypnosis application. Rape game. Sakaza Village, Indecent Festival, Defiled Shrine. Okay, rape game. Harem of Nurses. Hey, yo, for anyone who doesn't know, nurses are some of the dirtiest whores on this planet. I'm just saying this. This is not a judgment call. This is an observation. This is an observation, okay? My parents worked in the medical field, and I gotta say, the kind of stories that these bitches would tell each other when I was dumped to sit on like a waiting chair while my parents were in hospitals doing their job. Nurses are filthy. They're also faithless. They will not, there's like a 0% chance that a nurse won't cheat on you. Keep reading. They didn't just go after wacky porn games. There were a bunch of normal ones too. The one I keep remembering is SCP Containment Breach. Really? SCP Containment Breach? I think I just found a list of 100-hour reviews. Yeah, I think so too. So, man. Slave Doll. Okay, that's just fucking a doll, I would assume. Dark Dominance Chain Control. Probably a rape game. Back to the Fuka. Zombie Fuka 2. Oh, you fuck zombies. Necrophilia, but may not be a rape game. Depends on whether the zombies are sentient or not. Guilty Hell. White Goddesses and the City of Zombies. Is it rape if a non-sentient creature rapes a sentient creature? I suppose by speech of what I just said, yes. Escape from the Village of Lustful Rituals, probably a rape game. Sus Ritual. That's probably an Among Us sex game based on what I've seen Zoomers are attracted to. Ruled by Rule. Prison Break Princess. Jesus Christ.
This list basically exploded
Sex-loving
overnight.
family.
Hundreds of adult-only games vanished. Especially games that, well, we will call not...
I'm going to be honest with you, most of these look like they are actually rape games.
Involving consent or involving family members, right? The sort of thing that many people would find to be extremely distasteful, but that in the setting of like a fictional thing for adults is not illegal, at least in every jurisdiction, right?
Do you think somewhere out there amongst this cesspool there's a wholesome porn game? Where there's like a game where it's just like, you know, boy meets girl. They're both of consenting age, and they have loving sex for no other reason than procreation. Do you think that exists? Is it rape if you fuck a furry? No. Furries on people, keep. I'm not sad that these games were removed, but it never just ends there. No, this is the thing, is people are going to be like, yeah, good, they should remove these games, but those kind of people are not seeing the bigger picture. Right? All of these people who are celebrating the loss of these games, fine, great, wonderful, you know, let's not fuck kids, let's not do illegal shit and stuff like that, but it doesn't stop here. Because if you give these people an inch, they take a fucking mile. And unfortunately, we've already given them 5 inches. Now they're going to take 7 fucking light years from you. It's not going to stop here. They're going to try and ban games with violence, with gore, with blood. They're going to try and ban games that broach on sensitive topics. You could have an incredibly good game, but like by the standard, you can expect that Baldur's Gate 3 would be removed because there's a sex scene with a bear. I'm not searching up shit right now. I'm going to stay focused on this video. Search up April. Does pretty wholesome stuff. And Jay Naylor is pretty vanilla. I might actually look that up, actually.
That's the bit that's interesting. So yes, this is unpalatable content to some people. It's illegal, though, in a few jurisdictions, which we'll address later in the video. But here's what matters, right? Not all of these games are illegal. What this was a blanket removal. And you may say that in theory, Valve is complying with the law, except they're not. This is not about the law. This is
not about the law. This is about a bunch of fucking Karens deciding what you can and can't look at.
About third-party pressure, not legal compliance. The reason why is, well, payment processors. The admission. Valve admitted everything in a statement that was sent to Rock Paper Shotgun. They said this, quote, "We were recently notified that certain games in Steam may violate the rules and standards set forth by our payment processors and their related card networks and banks." Again, not do breach, just may breach. That's a through line here. So responding to this...
Well then, yeah, but these are Karens. They probably get horny at the thought of bear rape. The thing is, these Karens probably have the sickest, most fucking twisted fantasies that not I or any other logical human being could ever even imagine. But the fact is, because they're not getting sex, because no one's fucking them, no one else is allowed to have a good time. That's how this works. This is not about protecting anyone. This is about taking something away from someone else. That's what this whole thing is about.
Valve pulled all of the games. They notified the devs, offered the $100 and called it a day. You might be thinking, God damn, you didn't even put up a fight? Well, they can't. They didn't. And there's a reason why they just called it a day and caved so quickly. The brutal truth is that without PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, Steam kinda dies. Or at least a lot of its revenue goes away. I mean, think about it. Visa and MasterCard control, didn't make this up, 69%. Haha.
Nice.
Of global credit cards. It's pretty high percent.
Oh, by the way, guys, it's not a monopoly because there's two companies. But it's definitely not a monopoly. Visa and MasterCard definitely don't talk to each other in back rooms deciding what they are and aren't going to do together. That's definitely not happening. The end game of capitalism is corporatism, and if you ever let it get to corporatism, you're fucked. This right here is what Cyberpunk 2077 was talking about, where there's certain companies that just own the fucking world.
They dominate debit cards in the US as well, and lately they've been flexing. They've been cutting off other businesses, and if they drop Steam, that would be game over. Valve can't just go and create their own payment network. Can you imagine dealing with the infrastructure, the regulatory compliance for all the different regions? It would be a nightmare. So Valve are trapped. But you may notice something's been left out. We know that it may be the guidelines of the payment processors. We know that Valve is worried. But who's actually driven this issue?
I don't ask for it. I said I saw the name. I'm gonna do research later on it.
The agitators. The Aussies. Yep, the Aussies have done this. Thanks, lads.
Hey, remember when Australia started banning certain games? Hey, remember when everyone said, no, don't worry. Nah, don't worry about it. It's okay. It's just these few games. They just banned hatred. Because, you know, that's a game that should be banned. No, it's just a few of them, don't worry.
Basically, right? An Australian group called Collective Shout claimed a big victory here. Basically, they sent an open letter on July 11th. It targeted PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa directly, and it got 1,067 supporters to basically email these companies, which is not a lot, but it was enough. Now, they claimed then that they were subject to misogynistic abuse online for being involved in doing this campaign, and it was loud. A lot of people looking at this basically just said, hey, you censorious bastards, go away. You don't get to just impose your whatever values on the rest of us.
By the way, the same issue is actually the same issue I have with Twitch. Right here. Twitch has its own policies for what you are and aren't allowed to say. And I don't think they should. I think Twitch, being a US-based company, should only be relying on what speech is allowed and not allowed within the United States of America. I think that they should be baseline enforcing freedom of speech the way it is laid out in the US Constitution. That's how I feel it should be. Because you know what? If it is baseline, think about this. If Twitch's speech laws are baseline, what's in the US Constitution, that means that they have to hardcore enforce that shit. But because they've got their own little twisty-turny fucking rules, they get to decide who is and isn't banned. They get to manipulate things. Do you think that an open content free speech streaming service would go well? Yes. Yes, actually. Because either you have to allow all of it, and that means you've got a wider audience to target and people will find specific streamers, even if you feel specifically that there are some people saying some exceptionally vile shit. Guess what? That means that instead of hiding their speech, instead of like dodging and diving and doing weird shit like waving a gun around on stream when a particular person is there as like this esoteric kind of threat that's not really going to get them in trouble, all of a sudden they just say what they think and you know exactly who the fuck they are. That would be so good. I've learned this lesson when I was in the US. Right? I've learned this lesson speaking to people of different races around the world when I got to travel a lot when I was younger. Almost all the time, every single one of those people said, I would rather someone say the most disgusting racist shit to my face because then I know I can write them off as a human being and never have to deal with them again, rather than dealing with this twisty, turny, you know, they say things out the side of their mouth in a way that people don't quite understand or that they can interpret in a different way, because then 5 other people start defending this fucking guy. When I say fuck that guy, I know what he means. And then 5 other people are like, no, you don't know what he means. He actually meant this. No. I would rather deal with a much more cruel world where people say what they fucking think and you can eliminate people out of your life who you feel have zero value because they say what they think. Every US company is licensed by the government. All the government has to do is refuse a license to a company that doesn't follow the Bill of Rights. Yeah, it would be much better. And you know what? You're going to hear some excessively vile shit if it's based off of freedom of speech. But I think that's a good thing. I really think it's a good thing.
Especially not the rest of the world if what you're basically doing is trying to, you know, go for the payment processors. Now, look, I am not making a claim that you should like all of these games, right?
And by the way, before anyone makes this argument, I want to make it clear that incitement to violence is not part of freedom of speech. That's not freedom of speech. That's already set out in the US Constitution. It's already right there. You can't go call for the death of someone. You can't motivate others to decide to shoot someone. You can't do that shit. That's already set out there. It would be a great thing, but won't it won't make any moolah. Does 4chan make money? Yes, it does. 4chan makes money, and if 4chan wasn't valuable, then why is it still there? How does it continue to survive for that long? Also, freedom of speech does not mean you're not responsible for the things you say. Exactly. You know, people have done this really weird thing, Jimbo, where everyone's like, I have the right to this, I have the right to that. But you know what they keep forgetting? That every single right you have has a corresponding responsibility that you're supposed to maintain. Everyone forgot about the responsibility and just keeps on screeching about their rights. You have the right to freedom of speech. You have the responsibility to deal with the consequences that come with that. But everyone's so scared of accountability that they won't fucking follow through on that. I mean, a forum website is easier to keep up than a streaming service. Yes, it is. But imagine how many more streamers would be saying the things that they really think and feel. How many more people would find the people that they agree with and think and feel the same way. And if they violate freedom of speech because they get a little bit too big, they puff out their chest a little bit too much, then you can deal with them. My take is that if companies and what are not allowed to say, what you can and can't say, there's no limit to what gets suppressed. Absolutely. Sure, today it's incest, tomorrow it's pineapple. And no, they will. They will start deciding arbitrarily who they're going to get rid of based on their own little speech universe, which is bullshit.
That you should find them palatable. No, I am not. What this is, though, is a policy discussion, one that actually does impact all of us. Now, what they were pushing for, I think to a lot of people, is an overreach, certainly a risk, certainly worrying. As always in the internet, there is a small percentage of people who go way, way too far in not liking something. That did mean that they, would be able to take, oh, that's a misogynistic message, yep. That's an angry tweet. They could just take all of those things and actually use them as further proof that they are being subject to misogynistic abuse online. And this would just further their argument, make it stronger, make it more emotionally resonant to the people at, say, MasterCard and Visa, who themselves are probably just worried about getting negative press. Now, let's go more into this group. Who are Collective Shout? Well, Collective Shout describe them...
Bunch of fat, ugly bitches who've never gotten laid. That's who they are.
...themselves as, quote, a grassroots campaign movement against the objectification of women and the sexualization of girls. They've been...
This is the same line against Gamergate. You know when people in Gamergate were like, stop fucking screwing up reviews? And they were like, you just hate women. Yeah. You see the dodge? They don't address the original issue. Has the movement, have the people who've ever been against the Gamergate movement ever come out and actually address the fact that everything in the media is manipulated? Not once. They never did. Not a single fucking time. Instead, they dodged the question.
Active since 2009. Their targets range quite widely. This is from actively illegal stuff to just content that they simply find to be distasteful. And they've taken on legitimately unsavory products. Tate Brothers, for instance, they try to challenge like sexist advertising, they boycott some films they don't like the 50 Shades of Grey stuff, but they've also went to target mainstream gaming, like say Grand Theft Auto. They actually got GTA pulled from shelves in Target and Kmart in Australia. And in that case, it was on the grounds of violence against women in an open world game with...
These people are literally against reality. These people are literally against fucking reality. Do you think violence against women doesn't happen in reality? Do you think people aren't racist in reality? Misogynistic in reality? Hate men in reality? Do fucked up shit to children in reality? Imagine being such a fat, unbearable hog of a human being that instead of trying to make reality a better place, you start attacking art forms. Caving woman's skull in baseball bat is why I play GTA. Yeah, you want something? Yeah, okay. I'll give you the story. I've given the story before, right? I played a lot of GTA San Andreas when I was a kid, right? When I played GTA San Andreas, I had a friend who used to come over to my house a lot, and he also used to play. So like, we would walk to my house, and like, he kind of like never did his homework. So like, I would do my homework, and he would play on like my PlayStation. He'd play San Andreas. One day, my best friend, my childhood friend, came over, who I hadn't seen for a while, and he started playing GTA San Andreas on the same save. And he opened up like because there used to be a camera in game that you used to take pictures of things with, right? And he opened the camera roll thing, and he just saw like a bunch of pictures of like upskirt shots of dead hookers. And my friend looks at me, he's like, yo, what the fuck is this? Dude, what the fuck is this? And I looked at this roll, and I'm like, what in the fresh hell has this guy been doing on my fucking save? And I realized at that time, saying to my friend, It's this guy who comes over to my house, and he's done this. Like, it sounds like my friend's got to be looking at me like I'm sitting next to the next fucking Ted Bundy, aren't I? Because there's no fucking way in hell he's ever gonna believe the fact that it wasn't me. He's just sitting like, yeah, it was this guy. I'm trying to think of what I can call him that's not his real name. I'll just call him Steve. Yeah, it was Steve. It wasn't you. Yeah, sure. And I'm sitting there like, oh my god, I'm so fucked. Oh my god, this is so fucking disgusting. My friend left that day, and I immediately deleted that save. And then when Steve came back around to play, he was like, yo, what the fuck happened to my save? I was like, it got corrupted, bro. Sorry. I didn't want to have that conversation with him about him shooting hookers and taking pictures of their underwear, their low poly underwear in GTA San Andreas. I just didn't want to have that conversation. I was like, I got corrupted. I don't know what to do. And to this day, sometimes I still think I lie awake in bed and think if my childhood friend thinks I'm a fucking murderer. And if he even remembers that. Because I still sit there going, there's no way he believes it was this other guy that did this on my save. There is no way, because if I was in his shoes, there's not a chance in hell I would believe that. The point of this is this doesn't, like the guy I knew who did this grew up to be a fairly normal kid. Right? He's got a job, he's got a life. Last time I checked in, I think he had like a long-term girlfriend. I don't think he was married. But at last I checked in, I don't think he was running around killing hookers and taking pictures of their underwear. So I don't think banning the video game would have changed the behavior, because in real life he wasn't a fucking psycho. He just had some weird specific sexual fantasies that he probably grew out of. So this whole idea of banning video games isn't going to fix or change anything. In fact, it might make the problem worse. Because thinking about it, maybe that kid managed to grow past that weird sexual fantasy because he got to live it out for a little while. Steve hasn't been caught yet. You know, don't make me go back. Don't make me think about it. Maybe I'm going to go back and look in and see if he's in prison. Portraying something doesn't mean supporting it. Absolutely. But you see, yeah, you gotta dumb down your thinking, Jimbo. You've got to think of this like you're a fat hog who's never had a sexual relationship in your life, who's never had a family, and who's incapable of thinking about anything but themselves. And then you'll kind of understand where they're coming from. Because they don't see art forms, they just see political opinions everywhere, because they're that fucking stupid. Would you sit down for a debate with Anita Sarkeesian? Absolutely, Filter. But she wouldn't sit down for a debate against me. Because after about 5 minutes, when she calls me a racist, I'm just going to say, you're just saying that because you're a fat, ugly whore who can't keep a stable relationship. You're probably childless, and I've got a present for you, and I'd reach into a bag and hand her an empty egg carton. There's no arguing with these people. There's no changing their minds. They're mentally captured and incapable of any unique thoughts of their own. They're not capable of thinking outside of themselves.
With a whole bunch of characters, if you just go beat people up, yeah, you can do that. You know, you can say, oh my god, look at this terrible thing in the game that I just did and recorded.
I know they would.
Interesting. Now, they also went for Detroit Become Human for the same thing. Other campaigns against that game. Oh.
Detroit Become Human was actually a pretty decent cinematic game. I think Detroit Become Human was more of a movie than a game. But I also don't think that means that it should be banned or you shouldn't be able to experience it. I think they did a pretty good job like showing that fucked up dad who was like beating the shit out of the robot and his kid I think they handled this topic well. It's not like they were celebrating it. They were just expressing something that would happen. That's what I remember. But my memory is dog shit. So I don't remember all the details. Look, to me, I'm not that big of a fan of cinematic games where I feel like I'm playing a movie. That's why I can barely remember Senua's Sacrifice despite having played it on stream. And like, it doesn't hold that much value to me. But someone obviously enjoys it. The kid was just another... Oh yeah, that's right. The kid was a robot too. I forgot that part. So it's just a middle-aged tired dude who beats his electronics. That's right, he was fucking up 2 toasters. How could I forget? You see how bad my fucking memory is.
Failed, but it is clear that, yeah, they're able to pick up wins. I mean, even in Steam, they've got wins, and this is not their first win on the Steam platform. They've complained about multiple Steam games before. Some got pulled individually, but this July, things...
Now, why would you pull this game when I've seen this game in real life?
Been different because they changed tactics, where instead of targeting Valve, they just went straight to the payment processors, which, look, if you're a political operative, definitely say that's a smart move, right? Go above and above.
But if service bots were real, day one, you'd see YouTubers tormenting them. It would be like an entire genre, Benji. It would be like actually an entire genre. You're 100% correct about that. There would be there would be a Mr. Beast challenge where Mr. Beast is like, I gang raped 7 different AI robots that I gave sentience. Let's see which one has PTSD first. And the robot that lasts the longest gets freedom. And then he lets it out the cage and just immediately executes it on the spot with a shotgun to end the video. What's wrong with punching a misbehaving toaster? Nothing. It's called percussive maintenance. We know this. We've been doing it forever.
Above and have a massive impact. That's what they decided to do. And these are companies that have caved before. As an example, take a look at Tumblr. They banned all adult content after payment processors threatened them. PayPal was actually dropped.
Is Tumblr still alive? I thought it shut down. Jeez, all that Tumblr had back in the day was porn. That's all they had.
Ebook sellers over, let's just say, non-vanilla content. Non-vanilla content that is legal. That's the thing. And this is basically the playbook, and it's one that has just worked in Steam. But here's the thing, I kind of just misled you. I did it though for a point, so let me explain. It is true that their campaign against Tumblr worked, and that yes, Tumblr just went to pull down all the prawns. But part of what sealed the deal for Tumblr was heaps upon heaps upon heaps of actual child, abuse.
Which was an actual problem, and guess what? That's illegal shit, and those people should be in jail. And in a fucked up way, by getting rid of it, what Tumblr did was they deleted evidence.
Content, material, CASM, I believe it is called, in the press. Now, the Tumblr was, or cheese pizza is often what people would say online. Now, that Tumblr was a disgusting cesspool that was riddled with that actually illegal, just about everywhere content, was essentially an open secret on the internet. Tumblr was absolutely asleep at the wheel. They did not do a good enough job of policing their own platform. And because of that, I honestly can't say I'm surprised that payment processors wanted nowhere near it, because the facts were that content existed there, and a lot of, the maps, they congregated there. Okay, let's bring us back to Steam, though. So, waypoints and avail...
Hold on. Oh, yeah, remember that Collective Shout supported the Netflix movies Cuties? The one that had children twerking for... Did they support that movie? Are those the same people? Are you fucking serious? Okay, that fantasy I had in my head, where I was like, people should be phoning Visa and MasterCard as like fake journalists, being like, are you aware that Collective Shout is full of pedophiles? Do you support pedophilia? That no longer seems like you would be lying now. That seems like someone needs to do that. And then be like, we need to post a bunch of fake journalist articles saying Visa supports pedophilia. Like really fuck with their reputation so that they have to change their stance. Holy shit.
Ailins reported something interesting here. She flagged that Valve does actually put extra scrutiny on adult game submissions. For just one example, a game got rejected for inaccessible files that, quote, might feature underage characters. So was illegal content really getting through all the time with Steam? I would say probably not in most cases. But it did happen once. Steam did have one major slip-up, and Collective Shout exploited that brilliantly.
Of course they did.
Do you remember a game called No Mercy? It released in March, and it featured, quote, non-consensual domination of family members. Collective Shout mobilized against this game. 3,000.
So they should have just pulled down the game. But no, these fat bitches with their Cheeto-dusted fingers decided to go for the payment processes.
Emails were sent to Gabe Newell, 70,000 petition signatures happened, and here's the crucial detail. That content was illegal somewhere, just not everywhere. Where it was illegal was the United Kingdom and Australia, and actually under relatively new laws. Now that does mean that under Valve's own rules, that game should not have been sold at all in those regions. Valve didn't act for 5 days. They only acted after international media coverage. I mean, the UK government even commented in that case. Now, eventually the developer pulled it entirely to avoid causing Valve more problems. This, of course, gave Collective Shout ammunition. They could just point to No Mercy and they could say, see? Illegal content can get through. The implication was perhaps that Collective Shout over-egged their claims, perhaps mixed the potentially illegal in some regions with content that they simply find distasteful. Never mind the basic fact that most of the removed games were not illegal in all territories. But the narrative stuck. The waters were muddied because of this.
Remember when I said whenever there's a fist fight, whenever there's an argument, all nuance becomes lost within 5 seconds. Nuance does not fucking matter. Narrative matters. And they use narrative as a weapon. There are certain people who are just fucking pieces of shit. And if you're a kindergarten teacher, you know it. When I say the words, there are kindergarten teachers who are god complex pieces of shit who get satisfaction out of ruining little kids' lives because they can control those children. If you're a kindergarten teacher, in your head, you know exactly who the fuck I just mentioned. And if you don't, might be time to look in the mirror. If you're a cop, you know that there's some guy, or at least or a group of guys who are there because they are fucking pathetic weaklings who are not there to be a benefit to society, but they're there because it gives them control over other people. Anyone who's worked a job in an office knows that there's that one piece of shit in middle management who makes everyone else's fucking life worse. They keep on giving instructions that are contradictory to each other, not because they're confused, but they know exactly what the fuck they're doing. And they're doing it on purpose to ruin people's lives. And you know exactly who I'm talking about. Those people always exist. And when a bunch of fat hogs get together, they form a group like Collective Shout to do that. Because they understand that as a group, as an amalgamated group of Snickers-eating, cat-owning, sweat-stank bitches together, they have more force and more weight, both physically and metaphorically, than they do alone.
No Mercy thing. Groups like Collective Shout can just point to an event like No Mercy being pulled, and they can use that to convince payment processors that other illegal content might be there on the platform. Because all they really need to do is convince a large company that, look, it's happened before, it could happen again, you don't want that risk, you should pressure them. That's how this kind of thing goes. This story, though, does actually hit rather differently when you know a little bit of the history in the background. You see, back in June 2018, Valve actually made a promise. They said that anything not illegal or trolling was actually allowed. Now, this came after backlash over adult game removals. They specifically said that they...
So you see, Steam already took a stance on it that was reasonable, and that the Karens can't have that. That's not allowed. No. You see, now they already knew that if they went to Steam, Steam's message back to them would be Lamau, fuck off. So they went one level deeper. You know how it's like You don't criticize the YouTuber or the streamer or whatever. You go after the sponsors to ruin their life. This is just an advancement on that formula. We're getting more efficient at this. What's that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus says, was it Morpheus who said with each iteration they become exceedingly more efficient? That's exactly this.
Would not cave to payment processors or to interest groups. But here, 7 years later, they have done exactly that. They've just went and pulled games.
No, it wasn't Morpheus, you're right. It was the architect, when Neo was speaking to the architect. Yeah, Matrix 2. It was when he was in the room with the TVs, and the architect was saying with each iteration, we've become exceedingly more efficient. That's what's happening here. With each iteration, they become exceedingly more efficient at ruining people's fucking lives.
May violate payment processor rules. And remember, that is the wording of Valve's new Rule 15. May, not does. May. Now you might think that may is just a very woolly, non-specific word. I would actually argue that here, oh no, may is a very, very specific word. They're using it because, well, it might not, but we don't want to run the risk of getting the proof. That's the specific language. It's a rule directly designed to give Valve preemptive permission based on their interpretation of other people's rules, but not anything that's actually deeply fought over or proved in any sort.
I have the links, Super. I have your links that you sent, Jimmy. I'll take a look at them now after this video.
Sort of objective sense, or at least one that would lead to like a common societal or legal whatever consensus. And in a way, that's scary. What's next? I mean, will developers see these mysterious rules before they go and submit their games? If people can find success over things that they find distasteful, what does that mean for other types of games? What happens when payment processors change their standards again? Because they will change them again. What matters is the collective shout just proved that the formula works, the plan works. Just over 1,000 emails alleging illegal content force this change. Not proving, just alleging.
Fuck me. Hold on, that few indicates Steam has around 132 million monthly active users. What about Visa? Visa's user base is typically measured in the number of cards in circulation. That's a direct population user base. Steam's active user, blah, blah, blah. 4.48 billion cards are active worldwide, and you're telling me 1,000 fucking emails got them to do something. How the fuck did they even manage to get Visa's attention? Also, thanks for the follows. There's this. How the fuck did these fat bitches manage to get Visa to even look in their direction? What the fuck did they put in those emails? What lying horse shit did they put in those emails that managed to get Visa to pay attention, do you think? Unfortunately, I'm using Visa cards. Yeah, do you have a choice? Probably not. They were emails from the right people. Well, maybe if I gain 700 kilograms, I'll start emailing them and they'll listen to me. Collective shout was probably an excuse, and Visa was already looking to do this. All payment processors tend to be very sensitive about these kinds of things because they're run by a bunch of people who are like 900 years old and are still working off of like the legalities of what like the prudes were working in Europe before a bunch of people, the prudes who escaped Europe to America to try and like avoid anything liberal. They're probably working off of like fucking their moral compass comes from like the 1600s probably.
queer and minority content before. It often would get flagged as adult only in a disproportionate way. And in some instances, as an example in YouTube, that would simply just be because of who is making it and the sort of topic they're talking about, not necessarily what's in it in any way that, say, if it was just normal basic hetero stuff would even be targeted, right? So that's been awful. It's happened in YouTube. A lot of those people are also worried about this, not just, you know, big Team Goontown who just wants to have Steam Gooner games. But guess what? It gets worse. So as we recorded all of this, we saw further proof. itch.io essentially descended into chaos. The site had to de-index any content tagged as adult from their browse and search pages. Jesus. That effectively takes it out of the public eye. It kind of removes discoverability. Now, they posted a blog that explicitly tied this to Collective Shout and payment processors. In their own words, quote, "This is a time-critical moment for itch.io. The situation developed rapidly, and we had to act urgently to protect the platform's core payment infrastructure." That is
just a side thought I've had. Is it just me, or does this feel coordinated? Does this, this is my conspiracy theory. All of this seems very coordinated. All the fucking payment processors removing the stuff at the same time as the UK putting in all these verification laws, at the same time as Australia trying to limit people's ability to watch YouTube under the guise of protecting children, all at the same time as YouTube's now going to be implementing an AI that's going to decide what age you actually are, and if the AI decides that you're too young, it's going to make you post your face with your ID and dox yourself so you can continue to watch YouTube. This feels so fucking coordinated. This feels like some shadowy group in a back room decided that now is the time, because every single iteration of this before never worked. So now they're like, if we do it all at once, like I said, from the right people. Now I understand what you mean, Gresh, when you say that. Now I get it. I missed it the first time. Now I get it. What makes the strategy work so well is that the emails are private, so they can allege whatever they want. It's not defamation, no matter how much and how egregious they put. You're right, Dog Rock. You're right. It's fucking disgusting.
Essentially meant they had to act as fast as they could and then deal with talking to developers later. And what's happening now is a company are auditing their entire platform to review content that, would be against the standards set by these payment processors. Standard devs will now have to sign off as sort of meeting all these requirements on their pages. And again, these are not legal requirements, these are just the rules of payment processors, not the rules of itch. And it's any game that could be adult, right? Could. The not safe for work tag doesn't just mean FAP. It doesn't just mean nudity. It can be a lot of other things. And here's what's wild. The game count on itch went from 28,000 games to under 7,000 as of this morning.
Yeah, I'm looking at this whole page and all I'm seeing is Brutal Legend. I played way too much of this game. It wasn't as good as the time I put in, but it was at least funny for the day. It was back when people still liked, what's his face? Jack Black.
Morning, right? That's 21,000 games. Award-winning artistic titles are being hidden and being pulled, all while the devs impacted by this cannot pull their funds from the site while their accounts are under review. In a way,
you know where this is going to hit? Actually, I just thought about this. Do you know what games this is going to actually hit the hardest? That aren't like porno games. Anyone who makes a horror game. Anyone who makes like an actually good horror game is fucked now. If you made really, really good, interesting horror games that were like had psychological elements in them, or gore, or anything like that, those are the games that are done now. Horror games are going to get the shit beaten out of them because of this stuff. The reason this is being mass coordinated is because of advertising. Kids don't have money, so advertisers are sick of paying shills to advertise to January 1st, 1950 accounts. That's all this is, 100% follow the money. I'm willing to bet you're right, because these people are not people that are morally bound or give a shit about the kids. And what happens internally is not what's happening externally. They will use moral arguments externally, and internally they're like, we're getting screwed over because a bunch of kids are watching this, kids with no money, and we're paying for an average CPM. So if we can lower how many people are watching the content, we can pay less money out. You know what? You're onto something there. You're definitely onto something there.
It's Itch's fault, but they kind of feel like they have to do this. I mean, compared to Valve, Itch is absolutely tiny. Percentage of Steam's traffic. But Itch isn't Steam. As a distribution platform, many of their pages are for art, books, non-commercial games, right? Both digital and tabletop. Especially they have pretty good penetration into the LGBT side of things, who maybe can't distribute through other channels, so they're also disproportionately impacted by this. So basically, kind of no matter where you are in the spectrum, this isn't particularly good for you. And for the people making this, well, they are just in limbo, their livelihoods cut off.
They're fucked. No,
so it's not surprising that they're kind of not willing to take this shit. You know, it's funny, the internet is an extremely divided and divisive place, but if you're to make it a Venn diagram and you're to put in a circle that just says Homo sapiens that get kind of horny, guess what? That covers almost everybody. So I'd at least hope that this could be an instance where people who perhaps wouldn't normally be on the same side of an issue can maybe band together, because it does actually impact everyone, because it's about the shared rules of the game. And that's what leads me to developers of not safe for work games trying to fight back. They are preparing a petition to the United Kingdom government. One of our members from Bellular.
That is the worst government to try and petition for anything. The UK is going to laugh in their faces and say, haha, fuck off. The UK government will not listen to a single fucking thing anyone has to say. Remember when the Brexit vote was held and the politicians didn't like the result of the Brexit vote, so they made people vote again to try and get them to change their minds? The UK government will not fucking listen to any petition. I'm actually shocked at all that they even responded to the SKG movement in the UK. The people at the top are like, Lamau, fuck off, you dirty peasant. Why do you think that anything you do matters?
Games passed on this statement to us from the petition. They want legal products to be protected from payment processor censorship. But of course, the big question is, will this matter? Because in 2018, Valve said they would defend creative freedom. In 2025, they won't even fight. I mean,
they can't.
My boy. Even Tim Sweeney's more of a goddamn fighter. Look at him!
The best that Valve can currently do is start getting involved in legal battles against this kind of stuff, and they're not going to do that because they're trying to run a business. And you know what? You know what the response from the payment processors is? Oh, you're fighting against us? Okay, we're just going to block Steam entirely. Fuck you, fuck your business, you're never going to work again. Those payment processors have every single company dangling their balls over a fire. Doesn't it sound like we need a plumber's brother in there then? Look, the problem with that solution is that if you start giving these people the Luigi special, is they're going to use that as an excuse to weaponize against it. Did the health industry get better after that one insurance company got nailed? No, it got worse. Because now they have an excuse as to why they behave the way they do. I don't know, I'm going to admit this. Maybe there is a solution to all of this. Maybe there's a way that Valve could win. But I am not smart enough to be able to see that solution. I wish I was. I wish I was some Stephen Hawking gigabrain motherfucker who knew how to get around this and would help Valve do that. But I'm not smart enough to be able to find the solution here. I'm just not. I wish I was. That's capitalism. It's the greatest system in the world. So every system has corruption to it, right? And capitalism's been working pretty fucking well, but the longer that capitalism lasts, the more corrupt it gets. Just like any other system. We need a hard reset. And that's never happening. Why the fuck doesn't Walmart cash in on this? Walmart has their own payment processor. Maybe they would. Maybe they would. Maybe that's the solution. You see, like I said, I'm not smart enough to offer a solution. Maybe one of you actually sees a solution that would work and that is valuable. And I hope that if you somehow find a way to implement your solution, that when you're a billionaire, hey, 1%, come on. Come on. I wish.
Kind of balling. Shame about the whole exclusivity thing. Anyway, the message is pretty clear here. Any content that payment processors find objectionable could be next. So, look, it might start on a transfery game and a, sort of gooner game in Steam. Maybe two separate bits of the thing. It may start there. But what if it continues? I think we can see that sort of thing continue. Again, the law...
It's going to continue. Welcome to the age of censorship. We've just entered that era.
Laws that a bunch of this stuff isn't actually allowed, allowed per in the UK and Australia, those are relatively new laws. So we should actually think about the direction of travel here. You may not like something or agree with someone's, actions or whatever, but the law that hits them could hit you in ways that you don't necessarily have the capacity to predict because we can't look into the future. That's why thinking about the more baseline systems is actually what's important here. Because at the end of the day, in almost all of our societies, what's the point? The point is, well, laws are made up that are ideally via some sort of democratic process. That's the sort of stuff that people think they should be beholden to. Now, a private business has, of course, the right to do business, whatever way they want. That's okay. But what happens when a private business becomes such a large foundational piece of infrastructure that you cannot get around?
It needs to be regulated, but that's never going to happen because they will find every way around the regulation. People usually I hate regulation. I hate the idea of over-regulating the fuck out of everything. But these gigantic entities are not single individuals and they require government regulation to play nice. They might have the money, but the government has the guns.
That means that whenever PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, and other providers pretty much all agree and are very worried about their big corporate interests, about trying to defend their position as infrastructure by cozying up to governments, well, what way do you think they will end up being biased? But to bring it back to Steam, Steam being the place where anything goes as long as it's legal, is now dead.
Yep.
The spirit of it's mostly alive, but it is literally dead. Here's the thing. Once you become a platform that's large, you become a kingmaker. You hold a lot of power. If you invite not safe for work people onto your platform, you are saying, hello, we're inviting you over here. We are going to do business with you. And that would be great for all of our shared customers. You're safe here. Do business with us. Trust us. Well, if your processes are not tight enough to defend that space, say to let illegal content in, as Tumblr kept on doing, well, you basically betray all of those people that took you on good faith.
Doesn't matter. They're the peasantry. Who gives a fuck about them? Doesn't matter. I think the US dollar should be backed by bullets instead of returning to the gold backing. Just pulled a metro and having it backed by bullets. You want to print more money, make more bullets. Yeah, but the US government doesn't want to ever do that. It's not about what's right or what's going to work. The US does not ever want to back their currency by anything else because that means they don't have control over their currency. There's some other resource controlling their currency. So if you're backing it by bullets, you're looking at casings, you're looking at gunpowder, you're looking at the lead that forms the bullets, and that's a resource. That's a physical resource. Why would any government want to tie their monetary value to a physical real-world resource instead of it being some make-believe bullshit that they can just print out of thin air? That's not beneficial to them. They'll never do it. So we can have a conversation about the value of backing monetary things to physical real-world resources, but that's not in the benefit of the people who are in control. Remember, in 1972, when the US dollar was pulled off of the gold standard, They said the words temporary. This is a temporary measure. Over 50 years have passed. It wasn't temporary. But they needed to make sure people wouldn't lose their shit when they first did it. Just remember, 2 more weeks to stop the spread. Now we just have to make sure we don't end up waving our hands and bowing our heads to pay for something. It'll happen. At some point in the future, we'll all be long dead in the ground, but at some point in the future, there's just going to be like some payment process, like, you want to buy milk and bread? Do a little dance in front of the camera. Yeah. Smile. You better smile, boy. If you don't fucking smile, you're not getting your bread and milk, bitch. Damn. What a dystopian era we're going to live in.
And that means you are breaking your end of the bargain. Valve have done that here. And there's a reason why it's content like this that ends up being the sparking point. It's carnal. It's animalistic. It's topics that people feel, right? It's fears that people hold, and fear magnifies. Yep. As today shows. It only took 1,067 emails orchestrated by a group that knows how to play the system in a country far away that doesn't have much to do with most of the people watching this channel, yet it impacts global Steam. That should be worrying. And even better for Collective Shout, it's self-sustaining. That's because pushback, insults, and perhaps abuse that they get from people who have been angered by all of this, guess what? That just gives them more.
Here's the problem with these fat, ugly whores, right? You can see these fat, dumpy bitches who never have sex. This is what's going to happen now, is a bunch of people are going to have valid, strong arguments against them. And there's going to be a certain percentage of people who are going to send them emails that say things like this, like, you deserve rape. Or going to say, like, who are going to go and attack them and say, I'm going to kill all of you. And instead of ever replying to any of the valid criticisms, these fat, dumpy hogs are going to just hold up this 1% of people who are saying this crazy shit and say, look, see, these are the people who are against us. And they'll never actually reply to any of the valid criticism. And let's say we lived in an ideal utopia where everyone collectively decided no one's going to send these messages to these people. What's going to happen instead is they will manufacture them. They will manufacture those messages. They don't play fair. They never will.
Or fuel to do corporate jujitsu on risk-adverse multinational corporations who want a good quarter, no risk, no bad quarterly report dramas. As for Steam, well, the bar is low and the language of their rules is worryingly vague. It's not the only legal problem Steam has got. Oh no, there's another big one. We'll be covering it shortly, but for another policy issue that impacts you, well, how about this? The idea that Sony have potentially engaged in monopolistic practices and price manipulation
to they have.
Systemically overcharge you for video games by destroying market principles. That's the allegation, and you can learn about the story.
The allegation or the unspoken truth?
This video next.
Oof. Ooh, man, we live in a bad era. Things are about to get rough. We're about to see a lot of censorship coming down the pipeline. Welcome to the age of you're not allowed to think that.